As the successor to Lenin, Stalin made huge industrial and economic changes to the Soviet Union, helping it catch up to other world powers like the US and Western Europe. His regime was remembered for his signature propaganda campaigns that created the integral 5-year plans that totally transformed the Soviet way of life, infusing patriotism into workers all over the Soviet Union. However, Stalin's rule also marked one of the most bloody reigns in Soviet history up until today. When his regime introduced collectivization, many of the wealthier peasants who owned large areas of farmland revolted. Many of them were either killed or sent to forced labor camps, also known as the gulags. In total, at least 20 million people died under Stalin's rule. After Stalin's death, a brief power struggle ensued between two senior politicians in the party, Georgy Malenkov, who is second from left, and Nikita Khrushchev, who is on the right. Both men were important figures in Stalin's inner circle. In the end, Malenkov ended up ruling for less than 6 months after Khrushchev forced his resignation over claims of power abuse by Malenkov. Khrushchev's policies could not be any more different than Stalin's. During his reign, he set about reversing Stalin's policies totally, which was a shock to officials and the people. He outlined this in a speech to the Russian Congress, which later became to be known as the Secret Speech due to its sensitivity, as decades of propaganda had made the Soviet people greatly revere Stalin. In his speech, he mentioned how the mass killings overseen by Stalin were straying from the original Soviet policies made by Lenin and the Bolsheviks. Collective leadership, which was a big part of Lenin's policies, was overruled by Stalin because of his power abuse over the Soviet Union. In the years that followed, several leaders succeeded Khrushchev, but their reigns of power were not successful in improving the Soviet economy and quality of life, even with the use of the 5-year plans. These leaders were Brezhnev on the left, Andropov in the center, and Chernenko on the right. In the spring of 1985, senior Soviet politician Mikhail Gorbachev was elected to be the leader of the Soviet Union. He had the immense task to bring the Soviet Union out of economic recession and reform society, something that Khrushchev could not complete in his reign. Excess spending in the Cold War to compete with the US caused lesser funds to be allocated to the economy and the people. To do this, he introduced 2 strategies for reform, which would be known as glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. Under glasnost, Gorbachev opened up the Soviet economy to the world, making it a free market economy, which was controlled by the supply and demand of products.
So glasnost is the opening of the society, right? So basically having more freedom, more access to the outside world, people maybe can travel a bit more freely. Publications that were banned before now they became available. So you have glasnost, and then you have perestroika, which is more like restructuring, right? Economic restructuring, make it a bit more, because you're part of this global economy, and then to liberalize the economy a bit, have some elements of capitalism, so, and then, when you do this, and then, I think people have that tendency, okay, maybe there are other ways, of living.
He also traveled extensively, warming relations between the Soviet Union and other international powers. Gorbachev took steps to make elections open to the people. Better relations with other global powers made Gorbachev decrease military presence in countries that were taken over during World War II. These were also called satellite states, which were under heavy Soviet influence. The lack of military presence in these satellite states, especially in Eastern Europe, created opportunities for citizens to demonstrate demand for independence. More political freedom for economic reform brought by Glasnost backfired, leading to the organization of independent elections. Eventually, these satellite states pushed for independence, and without military support, Gorbachev no longer had any control. The Soviet Union had no choice but to recognize the independence of these countries. With a crippling economy and the Union in ruins, Gorbachev was forced to resign, marking the death of the Soviet Union. Today, the legacy of the USSR lives on. After almost 30 years, Russia has moved on from its past. Bold propaganda posters and abandoned towns all over Russia and Eastern Europe bear the mark of the dictators that ruled the Soviet Union. Older generations today recount the famous propaganda campaigns that were trademarks of every Soviet leader, from Lenin's revolution to Stalin's 5-year plans. In its time, propaganda told the Soviet story to the people, and no doubt will be a part of Russia's long and colorful history.